In this video, we will talk about the core of any algorithm, about the conditional if statement. And since we are talking about the if, then we have to touch Boolean data type too. This topic is important because even in our everyday life, it's one of the key ones. What's the point? The main idea of the if statement is a comparison and decision making. If you observe yourself, you will probably very quickly notice that we are constantly mentally performing some kind of checks and comparisons. For example, we cross the road. Are there cars on the road? If there are, then we estimate whether the car is far away, and then we cross or we wait, and after a while we check again. We go to the shop. We collect purchases in the cart according to our purchase list. And from time to time we check the list, have we got everything that is needed or not. If that's not all, we go further, etc. A conditional if statement in any programming language provides a similar mechanism for checking and then reacting to the checking results. The brightest everyday example is authorization on any site. The site asks us for a password, we input it into the form, then it compares whether we inputted it correctly or not. That is, there are always only two options. Yes, we inputted it correctly, no, we inputted it incorrectly. Depending on the checking result, the certain actions are performed. If the password is inputted correctly, then the website authorizes us. If not, it shows the form again until we input the username or password correctly. To put it simply, the if conditional statement checks the truthiness of some condition, and as a result it returns a special Boolean data type which can have only two values, true or false. So, if we check any condition, the result of this check can be yes, it's true, true, or no, it's not true, false. And depending on the result of the check, we perform certain actions. This check can be done using comparison operations. For example, condition 10 greater than 1 is logically correct or true, and the result of such an expression will give us true value. The condition 10 is less than 1 is logically incorrect, and the result of checking the truthiness of such an expression gives us false. In general, the syntax looks like this. We use the keyword if, then after it we put the logical condition the truth of which will be checked. Then we put a colon and on a new line indent for spaces. After that we describe those actions that should be performed if the result of checking gives us true. Instead of an explicit true here, we can put any expression, the evaluation of which will return us true or false. For example, 2 multiplied by 2 equals to 4. Double equal character here. And it will return true, because this expression will return true. If we need to add some action that should be performed if the condition will be false, then we add the else keyword, something like otherwise. For example, let's say the password is 123 for brevity, and the user input is 000. And then I want to check if user input is equals to password. I want to print OK if it's true. Otherwise, else, I want to print invalid password. Invalid password, because this expression returned false. Please note that in this situation only one block of code will be executed, either the one described in the if block or the one described in the else block. If the checked condition evaluates to false, the control flow immediately passes to the else block. What other comparison operators are there besides equality and greater lesser? The most common are the following. Exclamation mark equals, that is not equal. Less than or equal, greater than or equal. Also there is the not keyword, its negation operator. Not true will return false. For example, this example returned invalid password. If I set here the not, I will get the OK, because this expression returns false and not false means true, so the OK. And also the AND and OR operators are also commonly used. OR. We can combine multiple Boolean expressions into compound constructs using the AND and the OR operators. That is, we can check the truthness of two or more expressions. For example, if user input, I want to use a parenthesis here, if this expression and 2 multiplied by 2 equals to 4 will print otherwise. If the AND operator is used, then the entire expression will return true only if each of its parts will return true. This should be true and this should be true. When OR is used, then the expression will return true if any of its parts will return true. It's not true because there is OR, of course. If the first part will return true, this one for example, then the rest checks are not even evaluated. There is no practical sense in it when we use OR. In this case, it will be this way. This part is true, so this one is not even checked. There is also the is operator. It's an operator that compares objects, if it is the same object or not. It's also important to remember what Python interprets as true or false. Python interprets as true all non-empty objects, that is, non-zero numbers and everything that will not give zero after calculations. Not empty strings with at least one character. Non-empty lists and dictionaries, that is, lists and dictionaries with at least one element, and true. Accordingly, all empty objects are interpreted as false, 0, and everything that will result 0. Empty strings, empty lists and dictionaries, and special type none. We will talk about it later, and false of course. And also there is the in keyword. The in keyword is used to check if some value is present in some sequence, in a string, in a list, and so on. For example, if s letter in John word, then print ok, else print not ok. There is no s. It checks for the occurrence of the letter s in the John string. If it finds it, we get ok. If not, we'll get not ok. The in keyword can be used with any sequence or iterable object. Strings are just fine here. Not ok, because it's capital. Okay. Sometimes you need to check something several times. For example, let's suppose I need to check the length of a string. If the length of the string is 8 characters, then we perform one action, 6 characters another, and 4 the third action, and so on. Such multiple checks can be performed using the elif statement, short for else if. For example, I need a string 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 characters length. If len of this string equals to 8, then I want to print something like length is 8. Else if, then I put here a new condition to check. 6, and at last else print something, doesn't matter. Length is 8. Length is 6. Okay. Also, we can use nested if statements. Let's suppose that before you validate a password inputted by a user, you want to check whether the user inputted anything in the login form or not. In this case, the validation code can be nested and can look something like this. For example, so if user input, then I want to check if user input equals to password. If it's true, welcome message, else run password message. And else for this, if there is no any user input, run password. But if I pass here an empty string, I will get input your password please, because empty strings are treated as false. Sometimes it can be convenient to use the ternary operator. That is, we can write a conditional expression in one line. It looks something like this. Print welcome if user input, else print something like this. Run password. On the first place we put what should be done if this expression will be true, else not true. But in fact such expressions are not often used, you cannot write much in them, and they are harder to read. If it's used, then only for something very simple and very rare. And now I want to return to some strings methods, and in general to any methods that begin with the words is and has. For example, s equals to 1 to 3, it's a string, and let's print its attributes. And there are some methods like is all num, is alpha, is space, is digit, is title, is upper, and so on. This is a hint that says that the method returns true or false, a Boolean type. So for example, isDigit methods will return true if all characters of its string are digits. So if it's true, I want to convert s to integer data type. So if s, then I am calling the isDigit method. And I converted the s string to the a integer. Finally, I want to show you a part of the solution to a problem called FizzBuzz, which is said to be sometimes asked in interviews. It is formulated approximately as follows. You need to write a program that displays numbers from 1 to 100, but instead of numbers that are multiples of 3, the program should display the word fizz, and instead of numbers that are multiples of 5, the word buzz, and if the number is a multiple of both 3 and 5, the program should display the word FizzBuzz. So 3 fizz, 5 buzz, and it is quite possible that on interviews you have to offer the most effective solution, but I'm not sure. Nevertheless, this task is very well suited for today's topic. I'll show you the most obvious solution. I will show only part of it because a loop should be used here, which I have not yet mentioned, but the main idea of the task won't change from this. So let's define a function FizzBuzz. That gets an integer as an argument. To check the number for multiples, I will use the modulo %character. You probably remember that modulo returns the remainder of a division. If the remainder of the division is 0, then this will mean that the number is multiple of 3, 5, etc. So if I modulo 3 and the remainder equals to 0, then I want to print fizz, else if I modulo 5 and the remainder equals to 0, I want to print buzz, else if I modulo 3 equals to 0 and I modulo 5 equals to 0, then I want to print FizzBuzz. And in any other cases, I want to print just I. This code will work, but it won't work correctly, because we will never see the FizzBuzz message, this one. Why do you think so? Because there are more general checks here. There are checks for multiples of 3 and 5. And the last check is more specific, which checks the simultaneous multiplicity of number by 3 and 5. And these more general checks, so to speak, absorb this specific one. In practice, this means that the first is the check for multiplicity of 3. And if the input number is a multiple of 3, then the print fizz statement will be executed immediately. That is, the if block has completed its task, and program's control flow will immediately go to the part of the code that comes after the if statement, here. It will go here. That is, if a multiple of 3 will be found, then the elif check for 3 and 5 will never be performed. To make this part work as it should, the code needs to be rewritten. It is necessary to move a more complex check, a more special case, where there are many components, to the first place. and let's check it. I will call this function several times with different arguments as it is data. FizzBuzz 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10, and 15. And let's run the code. 3 fizz, 5 buzz, 10 again buzz because 5, and FizzBuzz for 15. And by the way, notice how inconvenient it is to call this function so many times. Imagine if you had to do this 100 times. But we will leave this problem for the future. So it's done. We got what we need. In the next video we will talk about lists. If you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.